Now, one of you got at me on Twitter, and Josh says Colorado hype, man, it's overrated. There's too much Colorado hype, too much hypotheticals, and not enough results. If they finish 4-8 or 3-9, the media will keep making excuses for Colorado. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. Now, I understand where you're coming from. Because for a minute there, that first 3 weeks of the season, everybody and their mama was saying Deion this, Colorado that, Shedeur this. Are they going to make the college football playoff? And I think all of us kind of understood that wasn't probably really on the table for them long term. And if that was a thought after the first 2 weeks of the season, seeing them go back and forth with Colorado State, that third week of the season probably gave us a good gauge. I want us to get clear on this, though. We never predicted anything past 4-8 for Colorado. All right, so we did our whole win-loss, which doesn't have a ton of science to it, to be honest. There's a little bit of luck involved in that, but we had Colorado going 4-8 their first season. And to talk about hype for them, Vegas had them, I believe, at 3.5 total wins. So talk about hype over under 3.5. It's not too much to ask for going into their first year. Now it's bumped up a little bit this upcoming season. I think the expectation for them to be successful for most realistic college football fans would be to make a bowl game. But going back to this thought around, there's too much hype, they're getting too much attention, they're overrated. We're not overrating Colorado at all. Now, they have a very big if factor because we're going to see what Shedeur Sanders does. We're going to see how that new transfer portal class on the offensive line, if that allows them to elevate a little bit. The Big 12 is shifting in terms of the new members. There is some variance and some question marks for us to, talk about together here for the course of the next couple of months. But I want us to be clear here. We did not overhype Colorado. We feel how we feel about Coach Prime in Colorado. Ton of impact and influence with every single thing that he does, but they were a 4-8 football team last year, and that was what we had them at in the preseason. Now, I also want to say this, as we always do with Deion Sanders, there is always that factor that they could have a little bit more juice with a positive move. I think what we saw last year in terms of media attention, yeah, it was attention and it was stuff that maybe you can't quantify when it comes to winning football games, but that does help attract talent. Now, has it attracted the level of talent they need to win what they want to win? Not just yet, but don't get it twisted. Deion Sanders having success is more impactful than any other coach in college football for their respective teams. I'll rephrase that. Deion Sanders doing something positive for his team further benefits Colorado than it would if your standard FBS coach has success. Deion Sanders can get more juice out of that, if that makes sense. And the reason people talk about Deion Sanders, it's not to overhype him. It's not to try and pump him up. People talk about Deion Sanders because he's fascinating. Because as an NFL Hall of Famer, arguably the best defensive back to ever do it, and he is choosing to now coach college football and attracted one of the top recruits in the country to follow him to Jackson State and now to Colorado and Travis Hunter. His son's an NFL quarterback. There's a lot that's just straight up very, very interesting about Colorado. So I don't think people cover Colorado because they think they're going to win the national championship. People talk about Colorado because there's so much to talk about with them. There's so many things about Colorado we've never seen in college football before. We've never seen a coach go to the transfer portal and overhaul an entire roster overnight and try and change the game that way. We've never seen a coach really have a documentary series on himself the way that Coach Prime does. So yes, there's some things about it that I'm sure feel a little bit overkill. I don't doubt that, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. People don't talk about Deion Sanders in Colorado because they're this incredible football team. They might end up being that, and that would help, I think, everybody, to be honest, when it comes to the media game. But people talk about Deion Sanders because it's wildly, wildly fascinating and, quite frankly, something we've never seen before in college football. Now, I also want to make this very, very clear. Media in general, sports media specifically, is supply and demand. We base what we talk about on this show, yes, very much so based on what's happening in college football, but we talk about what y'all want to talk about. How many times have you heard me sit in this chair and say, hey, get at me on Twitter, get at me on Instagram, hey, subscribe to the channel, hey, like the video. I'm not doing that just because it helps us. It does, 100%, but for us, that's good data. That is a roadmap to what you want to talk about. And so the reason why you saw Deion Sanders popping up anywhere and everywhere last season was because people continued to provide demand for Deion Sanders, for Travis Hunter, for Shedeur Sanders, for Colorado. So people are trying to supply to meet that demand. So if people are frustrated with the way the media is operating according to Deion Sanders, I would say don't give the media what they want to hear. Don't give the media that signal that says we want more Deion Sanders. Now, I understand there is a fraction of the college football fan bases, or the college football public rather, that didn't really want to hear about Deion Sanders and didn't really want to hear about what's going on there. And some folks that were just new to college football because of Deion Sanders. And I think in some ways there's pros and cons to that. Another discussion for another time. The bottom line here is it's a supply and demand game, and there was a lot of demand for Deion Sanders. So people talk about Colorado being too much and Deion being too much and too much coverage. Like, it's fascinating. There's a demand for it. And just to revisit this, we personally did not take part in the overhyping of Colorado based on what we had in the preseason. So we can revisit that if we want to. We kept receipts. We can talk about it, but we personally feel like we have a good game for Colorado. And if they win the Big 12 this year, we'll talk about them, and we'll talk about them as much as you want to talk about them. So that's another reason to be subscribed, another reason to let us know how you feel about our content and about Colorado. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.